From food that happens to be made in unique ways to ones that have had various dead things found inside of it, allow us to show you foods you'll never consume after watching this. Number 15. The cucumber. In 2014, in Europe, a woman named Jenny decided that she wanted to go and get a cucumber for herself and her family. No harm in that, right? And when she went to the store to pick up her cucumber, everything was fine. But as she later looked at the packaging itself, she noticed that there was something inside the plastic that was over the cucumber. There were no holes in the packaging, meaning it wasn't something that just crawled in. What she found was a squished gecko, as in literally squished upon the cucumber via the process that was done to seal it up. So how could this happen? Quite simple, actually. The gecko just so happened to go in and be on the cucumber when it was snatched up for harvesting, and it was still there when it was put into the machine to go and seal it up. Jenny complained to Aldi where she got the cucumber and got a voucher for her troubles. She was just glad she spotted the gecko before she fed the cucumber to her grandson. Number 14. Rice and weevils. Rice is a food that many enjoy all over the world, especially since it's simple, can be cooked and eaten in many different ways, and like many other foods, has all sorts of flavors. But one flavor you don't want to get is weevil rice. And no, we're not making a joke here. You see, rice weevils are a very real thing, and they're a species of weevil that are rather infamous for going in and infecting batches of rice, especially ones that are meant for the supermarkets of the world. But how can they get through all the processes that are meant to keep contaminants out? That would be because of how they lay eggs. Female rice weevils can actually dig into the rice itself, lay an egg, and seal the rice back up, which means that no one sees any problems until someone opens it up. And suddenly there are dozens or even hundreds of weevils in the rice. This has happened more than a few times, and thus you should either be careful of your rice or just avoid it altogether. Your call. Number 13. Mother vinegar. Vinegar is a major cooking ingredient, and it's used in all sorts of ways depending on the meal that's being cooked at the time. However, if you get a big enough bottle, you might see something in the bottom of said bottle that'll get your interest, and not in a good way. But it's not as unnatural as the other things we've shown you so far. You see, this is called a vinegar mother, and believe it or not, this product is actually used to help make the vinegar itself. It's a colony of bacteria that's used to turn alcohol into acidic acid and thus give vinegar its sharp taste. Depending on the bottle and the circumstances, they can be as small as membrane or big as a mass. They won't ruin your vinegar, for the record, but they aren't exactly the most pleasing thing to look at. Number 12. Snake bean. When you were young, you were told to eat your beans, among other things, right? Because you needed them to grow big and strong? Well, for one woman in 2019, her kids could easily recite this story and never eat beans again. But a woman from Alabama got some beans and found herself looking at something rather unexpected. She was boiling the beans with her daughter when something floated to the top. Curious, she lifted it up and found herself looking at a severed snake head. Yeah, for real. How could this happen? Well, during the harvesting process for the beans, a snake was likely caught up in the process, and as the beans were sliced and diced, so was the snake. What happened to the rest of its body was not made clear. Oh, and just to be clear, this wasn't the only time this happened. A woman in Utah also had a snake head in her beans. She never ate beans again, and we don't blame her. Number 11. The oldest McDonald's food you'll ever see. We could give you all the stories in the world about why you shouldn't eat McDonald's in one form or another, but this tale is both science-y and horrifying all at the same time. Because a man from Iceland wanted to test the urban legend that McDonald's food doesn't age, so he got a burger and fries and put them in a plastic container and waited for 10 years. Yes, 10 whole years. Now that's science. As it turns out, the legends were true because the food was paler, but maintained its shape and wasn't turned to dust like other foods would be. The reason for this is twofold. First, the food tends to dry out quickly, thus preventing microbes from aging it. Then, there is a chemical put into the food that gives it a better shelf life. The catch? That chemical comes from human hair. Yep, there is basically human hair in your McDonald's food. Enjoy your next Happy Meal. Hey, before we continue, be sure to like or dislike the video. That way we can continue to improve the videos we make for you, our viewer. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Number 10. There's a fly in my peanut butter. Here's something that won't bring you much joy. Not only is there a good chance to find a fly or a bug fragment in your peanut butter, the FDA actually states that it's okay for this to happen, so long as it's a small part of the larger sample. The reason for this is that flies, other insects, and even things like rats can be caught up in the process of collecting peanuts and then turning them into peanut butter. So they're a quote-unquote natural contaminant and thus can be left inside the peanut butter put onto store shelves. Most times you won't find it in the ones you're eating, but it's possible. Number 9. Microchips. No, the government isn't bugging your food to spy on you. That won't happen, at least for a few more years. Anyway, one Reddit user was eating some meat when they found themselves looking at a microchip in the meat itself. But here's the thing, the microchip came not from the government, but from the farm, because farmers use microchips to look over the cows and even track them in various ways. The microchips are supposed to not make it to the final step in terms of making meat, but apparently they sometimes do. If you find one, you can likely contact the company about it. It might turn out in your favor as they'll want to avoid bad publicity. Number 8. Bananas with a sting. So far, we've shown you a bunch of items that feature dead things, which, to be fair, is bad, but sometimes just part of how food is processed. But in the case of one woman in 2014, she grabbed a sealed bag of bananas and found herself looking at very much an alive scorpion rummaging around in the bag. This is incredible for multiple reasons. Not the least is that the bananas came from Costa Rica, were packaged there, and then sent all the way to the UK, meaning that that scorpion had a long trip, and yet it lived. Number 7. Covered bread. So picture this. You go to the store and find a good loaf of bread. When you take it home and observe it, in full, you find that it's covered in a hairy substance you don't recognize. Such was the case of one woman in Northern Ireland. It turned out that the hairy fibers that were on the bread was an oven glove. You see, the bread was prepared beforehand, as you might expect, before being put into the store. Somehow, the baker didn't notice that the glove was put into the oven with the bread and somehow it fused with it. Somehow. After the customer made a complaint, this company was fined for their negligence and breaking certain protocols. Number 6. Not touching that fish. Paul Poley was a man who just wanted a fish that wasn't filleted. Was that too much to ask? Apparently so, because he was about to eat his fish at a restaurant when he noticed there was something inside the fish. Specifically, a live parasite, a crustacean no less. These parasites are all too common in fish because they'll eat the fish tongues and then live inside the fish to get more food. As for how it made it to poor Paul's plate, say that 5 times fast, fishmongers will usually check for the parasite before filleting them, but because he asked for one that wasn't that, the parasite wasn't looked for. He never ate fish again, and neither will some of you. Number 5. Baked mouse. When you go and make a can of beans, you don't expect to find anything weird in it. What could possibly end up in a can of baked beans? Well, one London man found out that answer the hard way. He thought he saw some string in his can of beans and he pulled it out and found a dead mouse on the other side. Ugh. The store had to remove 12,000 cans of beans just to be cautious, and the manufacturer was fined for letting this happen. Number 4. Chocolate bar bite. Eating a chocolate bar is one of the universal pleasures of the world, unless your name is Sue Calhoun, who had a universal horror of sorts happen when she bit into one. As she was eating a Milky Way, she tasted something hard, which is odd for a Milky Way. Turns out, it was a tooth, but not just any tooth, a human tooth, complete with a silver filling in it. She complained to Mars, the makers of Milky Way, and she got coupons for more candy. We think they missed the point, don't you? Number 3. Creatures in your curry. Curry is another one of those foods that can go with a lot of different things, but you don't expect to find things in your curry. Jason Dams did, and he's scarred for life. He went to his local Tesco to get some curry rice, cooked it in the microwave, and was about to eat it when he found a creature crawling out of the rice, and it was 3 inches long. After taking it back to Tesco, they discovered it was a caterpillar. How it survived the microwave, though, is just scary to think about. Number 2. Roast bile. If you don't cook your meat right, you're gonna notice pretty quick. But for one man, he was dining on some chicken, and found that it wasn't red or pink on the inside, but green, which is not typical at all. He returned it to the supermarket and showed them the meat. They later deduced that the chicken's gallbladder wasn't properly removed before preparing it for sale, and as such, it had turned the chicken green via its bile. Number 1. 8-legged grapes. In North Carolina in 2018, a woman found not one, but 2 black widow spiders in her batch of grapes. How in the world is that possible, right? Well, according to the supermarket, there was a decrease in pesticides, and that led to the spiders being on the grapes when they were being harvested. Thankfully, she wasn't bitten by these spiders, as their venom is known to cause a lot of harm to humans. And now all of us are going to fear eating grapes because of what else might be on the grapevine. Hey, thank you all for watching. What do you think of these foods that you might want to think twice about before getting again? Were you surprised by all these horror stories of food? Do you think that these are just limited stories, or do you think there's more out there? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.